It is Thursday, the first day of February 2024. Hello and welcome to the News International Edition. We're coming to you live from our Vision Group headquarters here in Kampala, Uganda. I'm Emma Akwero. We start today from Belgium, where European leaders have arrived for an extraordinary European summit on aid to Ukraine with the Hungarian Prime Minister Orban, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, European Union President Ursula von der Leyen, and Spain Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez among the many arrivals. Now, EU leaders are headed for a new round of arm wrestling with Viktor Orban to try to overcome the Hungarian leaders' vote on 50 billion euros in Ukraine aid.
EU leaders on Thursday piled pressure on Viktor Orban to drop his veto on 50 billion euros in aid for Ukraine as the unpredictable Hungarian leader once more took center stage at a crunch summit in Brussels. The latest EU showdown took place against the backdrop of swelling protests by European farmers who clogged roads around the summit with 1,300 tractors in a show of strength, lighting fires and pulling down a city statue. Orban, Russia's closest ally in the EU, sparked fury from his 26 counterparts in the bloc by thwarting a December deal to keep the desperately needed funds flowing to Kyiv nearly 2 years into Moscow's invasion. Speaking on arrival at the summit, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said the goal should be a unanimous agreement on maintaining the aid. First of all, I am convinced that today we need to reach an agreement at 27, and that must also be what we want to achieve together. The discussions I've had with many people have shown that this is precisely the will that exists, and that's why we shouldn't look for workarounds and try to cobble something together, but the aim must be to do what the European Union is called upon to do, which is to enable a joint decision. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte struck an upbeat tone, saying he was cautiously optimistic that a deal could be found if Hungary was willing to compromise. But facing down Orban, a veteran of numerous run-ins with Brussels, will not be easy, and the political arm wrestling in the EU capital is set to last for hours. Ever image conscious, the Hungarian nationalist sought to capitalize on the anger of farmers, whose grievances include the flood of cheaper Ukrainian imports triggered by the conflict, sharing a video online of himself visiting them Wednesday night. Just before the summit kicked off, he held what he called a casual morning conversation with Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and EU chiefs Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel. Orban has been accused of holding Ukraine's future hostage in a bid to blackmail Brussels into releasing billions of euros in frozen EU funds for Budapest.
Now, while focus at the EU summit has been Orban outside the nearby European Parliament protesting farmers' burnt tires as they did their best to make sure that their grievances were heard.
A day after 91 people were arrested for trespassing, French police are checking vehicles at the entrance to Rungi's wholesale food market, a vital distribution hub for the capital region's 12 million people. French farmers' anger continues unabated, and the crisis is taking center stage at a European summit to be attended by French President Emmanuel Macron. The movement is underway, it's on the move, and it's true that it's been brewing for a while. Everyone was getting annoyed. Now the movement has taken off. Until we get some real answers, we won't budge. French police arrested dozens of people on Wednesday as tensions escalated to new levels at protests by farmers in search of better conditions that have spread to other European countries. Tractors continued to block the A6 motorway at Chilly-Mazarin, some 10 kilometers from Rungi's wholesale food market, Paris' key food supply hub. We don't want to back down until we've made real progress, because we can't take it anymore on our farms. Today we've got standards falling on us in every direction. We work with living things, we are farmers, we are breeders. Along with our colleagues, we can't afford to have rules that prevent us from responding to the vagaries of the weather, to the needs of our crop rotation, because we've got European regulations, because we've got a ban coming down on us. Farmers' Union Coordination Rurel, who had called for the blockade, now sent out the directive to go towards the National Assembly in Paris instead. Defying warnings by authorities, some farmers converged on the Rungis wholesale market outside of Paris, where several people were arrested when some videos penetrated the complex. On the tractors moving towards the armored vehicles, it's symbolic more than anything else. We are determined. I don't think they are convinced we are going to last, and that's why we are showing them that we are still very much alive and that we are not going to give up. In any case, it's our life, it's our future, it's our children's future. So if you think you've got all the motivation in the world not to give up, you've done the hardest part. Now here, our tractor is here. The French government has generally struck a conciliatory tone during more than a week of protests, but it had also warned that actions at Rungis, which provides food and other essentials to much of the Paris region of 12 million people, and other key infrastructure such as Paris airports, would cross a red line. France has been at the center of growing rural discontent across Europe, with protests also held in Germany, Poland, Romania, Belgium and Italy, putting pressure also on the EU for protections. Amid mounting calls for higher incomes, less red tape and protection from foreign competition, there are huge expectations among farmers, said Arnaud Rousseau, head of France's largest agriculture union, the FNSEA.
Now, Palestinian men who are detained by Israeli forces have arrived at the Abu Yusuf al-Najjar hospital in Rafah. Mediators pushed on with efforts for an Israel-Hamas ceasefire as fighting raged on in the besieged Gaza Strip on Thursday, deepening a dire humanitarian crisis. The Israeli military troops had eliminated dozens of terrorists in the past day and destroyed a long-range missile launcher in the embattled city of Khan Yunis. The Qatar-based leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, was expected in Cairo on Thursday or Friday for talks on a proposed truce as shelling continues.
From the moment we were taken until we were released, there was non-stop torture. They used dogs to threaten inmates. It was cold and we were given merely one blanket. It was no use. The situation was very difficult and we were subjected to torture unlike anything we've seen before.
طيب طلع تقريبا فوق ال 50 واحد.
برضه عن حاجز معه شويه ليش ولا في سبب
I was detained for 7 days. For the first 72 hours, it was prohibited to drink, eat or go to the bathroom, and we were blindfolded and handcuffed during those 7 days. The situation during the detention was very tragic. Torture, beating and insults. As you see, this injury occurred when I was detained. My hands are wounded and will receive treatment, but don't know what will happen to them.
Now, it should also be noted that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has been totally infiltrated by Hamas after several countries suspended funding over Israeli claims that some UNRWA staffers participated in the October 7th attack. Now, away from Palestine, let's head over now to the US, where Meta CEOs Mark Zuckerberg and the chief executives of TikTok, X, Discord and Snap are grilled by the US Senate Judiciary Committee over the dangers that children and teens face on social media platforms. During the hearing, Senator Josh Holloway asked Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, if he's apologized to the families of victims who were impacted by child sexual exploitation on his platforms and invited him to stand up. Zuckerberg did so and stood before the families and he addressed them.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg gave a public apology in U.S. Congress on Wednesday as hostile lawmakers grilled tech chiefs over the dangers that children face on social media platforms. The executives convened by the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee were put to task in a session titled Big Tech and the Online Child Sexual Exploitation Crisis.
A Boeing plane lost a door in mid-flight several weeks ago. Nobody questioned the decision to ground a fleet of over 700 planes. So why aren't we taking the same type of decisive action on the danger of these platforms when we know these kids are dying?
No commission to go to that can punish you. There's not one law in the book because you oppose everything we do, and you can't be sued. That has to stop, folks. How do you expect the people in the audience to believe that we're going to help their families if we don't have some system or a combination of systems to hold these people accountable?
Tech giants are confronting a torrent of political anger for not doing enough to thwart online dangers for children, including from sexual predators and teen suicide. During one round of heated questioning, Zuckerberg was made to stand up and apologize to the families of victims who had packed the committee room. "I am sorry for everything you have all been through," he said. "No one should go through the things that your families have suffered." Josh Hawley, U.S. Senator, accused Zuckerberg of knowingly exposing teenagers to harm.
You've been coming in public and testifying under oath that there's absolutely no link. Your product is wonderful. The science is nascent, full speed ahead, while internally you know full well your product is a disaster for teenagers.
Senator,
and yet
that's
you
not
keep
true.
right on doing what you're doing. Your job is to be responsible for what your company has done. You've made billions of dollars on the people sitting behind them, you here. You've done nothing to help them. You've done nothing to compensate them. You've done nothing to put it right. You could do so here today, and you should. You should, Mr. Zuckerberg.
Also testifying to senators were X's Linda Yaccarino, Shou Zi Chu of TikTok, Ivan Spiegel of Snap, and Discord's Jason Citron. Zuckerberg told the lawmakers that keeping young people safe online has been a challenge since the internet began, and as criminals evolve their tactics, we have to evolve our defenses too. He added that according to research, on balance, social media was not harmful to the mental health of young people.
Now we'll keep you updated on the hearing of this story. Elsewhere, outside of the UN office in Bangkok, hundreds of demonstrators chanted slogans and held images of detained civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi as they protested against Myanmar's junta to mark the third anniversary of an army coup that ended the country's brief spell of democracy. Soldiers patrolled the deserted streets of Myanmar's largest city on Thursday, 3 years after a coup ended a short-lived experiment with democracy and as the embattled junta faces growing challenges to its rule. Streets and markets in commercial hub Yangon were largely empty, reporters also said, as opponents of the military called for people to stay indoors in a silent strike against the coup, which leaders say portrayed unity. A procession of around 100 monks holding pro-military banners and religious flags passed down one road, stirring the largely quiet atmosphere in the city of 8 million people with a heavy military presence, soldiers carrying machine guns on patrol and manning checkpoints. On the eve of the anniversary of the coup, the junta extended by 6 months the state of emergency it declared on February 1st, 2021, when it rounded up Nobel laureate Aung San Suu and the members of her party. The military claimed widespread fraud had taken place during polls weeks before, when Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy had trounced a military-backed rival in a vote observers had concluded was largely free and fair. The junta has touched villages, carried out extrajudicial killings, and used airstrikes and artillery bombardments to punish communities opposed to its rule, opponents and rights groups say. The Beijing-brokered peace deal has paused the fighting in the north, but the alliance has largely kept its recent gains and clashes continue elsewhere. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on Thursday for an end to violence in Myanmar and a return to democracy on the somber anniversary of the putsch. More than 4,400 people have been killed in the military's crackdown on dissent and over 25,000 arrested, according to a local monitoring group. And finally, from the continent of Africa, in a lake in the heart of Ivory Coast's capital, Abidjan, menacing crocodiles snapped up chickens thrown to them from tourists, including football supporters in town for the Africa Cup of Nations. There are around 300 crocodiles and caimans in the lake next to the presidential palace from the days of the father of the nation, Felix Heap. A custom of the local Basol ethnic group is to explain your problems to the crocodile-filled lake, which will sort the problems out for you. Let's take a look at this.
Je suis venu à Yamoussoukro pour supporter les Lions du Sénégal dans le cadre de la Coupe d'Afrique.
I came to Yamoussoukro to support the Senegal Lions in the Africa Cup of Nations, and I am taking this opportunity to do a bit of sightseeing, particularly visit the famous Cayman Lake next to the former palace of President Hafo Boyne. And it was an opportunity for me to see the caimans come out and be fed with chickens thrown to them by the public.
Avec des poulets que leur jetait le public.
It's a whole history here, and knowing that President Felix Houphouët-Boigny's house is back there, where he was born and all that, it's his village, at the same time his house, where he built his presidential palace, and all of that. So it's a story that's been written, that's all. So it's a pleasure to come back here all the time and see these caimans and see his house at the same time. It gives us a lot of memories, even if we didn't know it, but since history has been written, it is always a joy to spend time here in Yamoussoukro. It means a lot to us because we can come, stop and talk. But according to our Baul customs, one of the leading ethnic groups in Ivory Coast, you can come and explain your problem, your wishes, all that, and then the lake can sort out the things for you. That's what my parents told me. President Hapon's crocodiles were first given to him by the President of Mali in 1961, and the President of Mali came on an official visit to Ivory Coast. Modibo Keita was his name, and he gave crocodiles to the President of Ivory Coast, who put them in the lake in front of his house. This is the very origin of caimans.
And that's all the international news we had for you this afternoon. We'll be back again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Thank you for watching. Have a good afternoon.